Hi, welcome to our second webinar for the month of May for Orchestra. And this will be our last webinar for this school year. My name is Sean Morton. I'm your Orchestra Community Moderator on the Orchestra Communities brought to you by the Georgia Department of Education. I'm excited to talk to you today about just ending this school year. This school year has been full of challenges, but also a lot of learning opportunities, a lot of things I think we can go back and reflect on that maybe we would normally do in a school year, but this year has been like no other. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about how we're going to close out the year, what reflective practices we may use, and then how we think about going forward. And I'm really excited to hear about some of your tips and tricks for closing out the year and planning ahead and how you go back and reflect on your school year. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start first with post-production practices. Those practices we use to shut our programs down for the school year. So just some end of the year tips and tricks that have worked for me. I always start first looking at my inventory. I check my inventory a couple times a year just because it's easy after certain events for equipment, especially instruments, to go missing, especially some of our smaller instruments, violins, violas, but even cellos and basses can sometimes sprout legs. So I definitely go back through first and check all my inventory, make sure everything is accounted for. And then I look and see who's got stuff checked out. Any seniors definitely all has to come back. But actually, we ask that all of our students bring back anything that they have checked out. And then if they need it for the summer, we can recheck it out to them. That way we can get our eyes on that instrument, make sure it's in good repair condition, make sure it doesn't need a new string or need the pegs adjusted or need work over the summer. So it really gives us a chance to put eyes and hands on that instrument, make sure it's in good shape. And if a student needs it over the summer, it's no problem, but we definitely want to look into that. So I think inventory is probably one of the most important things we do at this time of year to make sure we have all of our equipment. This year particularly, we have so much equipment checked out to students. The majority of my school has been online, and so we have very few students in person. So most of my inventory has been out with kids at their houses. And so getting all that equipment back has really been a process this year. So definitely looking over that inventory, making sure it's all here. Then we like to go through and look at each instrument in our inventory, what needs to be done, and we like to label it. So we'll either take a card, a index card, or post it, or some sort of way that we can attach onto that instrument what needs to be done. Does it need a new bridge? Does it need new strings? Does it need the pegs redone? Does it need a new tailpiece? Does it need the end pin fixed? What sort of things need to be done? So we go through and card each instrument, and we make a note in our inventory notebook to go along with it and on our inventory spreadsheet so that we know exactly what needs to go out for repair so that when it's picked up, we know what it's getting done so that when it comes back, we also know what it was supposed to have done to it. That way, too, we can rotate through which instruments get new strings. So maybe we can only afford to replace our strings on 4 or 5 cellos a year. So if we replace strings on cellos 1 through 4 this year, next year we may do 5 through 9. So coming up with a way that you can rotate your inventory to ensure that they're getting new strings, especially at this level, at the high school level, but at every level, we want our instruments to be in the best playing condition possible so the kids get the best experience. So definitely labeling each thing that needs repair, looking at the bows, what bows can survive a little longer, what bows need to get rehaired, what's going on with our violin and viola inventory, just looking at all that equipment, labeling it all, then scheduling your repairs, making sure you've contacted your repair shops. If you're lucky like we are in Metro Atlanta, so we have access to multiple repair shops. So we often try to spread it out amongst the different repair shops. You may not have that option, but for us, it's been really nice to spread the business amongst our different violin and string specialty shops. So we schedule our repairs and we go ahead and get those things picked up for two reasons. I like to have it as much out of the building as we can in the summer because much of the summer, the building is not cool and they turn off the air for some reason. And so I'm sure it's a cost issue, but it really plays havoc with some of our instruments. The instruments that remain in the building, we usually loosen the strings so that way there's no weird tension that gets in those pegs and weird things don't happen over the summer. So we go ahead, send as many things as we can to repair that need to be repaired and get them out of the building so that they're good over the summer. Then we go through the process of cleaning everything else that's left. So we clean the instruments. We wipe everything down. Obviously, we've all been wiping things down like crazy this year, trying to keep everyone germ free. But we always do a really thorough cleaning. This is a great time to get the base goo off that can build up from the different types of base rosin that are available. We use all types of different things to make sure that those instruments are clean. The fingerboards are wiped down really good with cleaner. All the strings are clean. Everything is in good playing condition and ready to go for next year. We also go across and deal with our our uniform inventory. We do have some inventory of uniform jackets as well as dresses, the tux jackets and dresses. So we go across, make sure we have storage across the hallway from us, make sure everything's put away, hung back up, organized in a way that next year when we come back, we know where everything is. While it takes a little time on this end, it's so much easier in the fall when we start doing fittings and we're ready for that process to have everything clean and neat and be able to lay your hands on it quickly. Another thing that we really like to do at this time of year in our program is order our consumables. So we always kind of hold a little money back, and we're fortunate again as a high school, we're allowed to have a booster organization. You may not have that option, but you may be able to hold a little money back in your budget, or you may not. You may not be able to do this, but you could go ahead and make your wish list if you're not able to go ahead and order these things. We go ahead and we look at our rosin supply. We hot glue rosin on the wall during the year so the kids can use it, but it doesn't get lost, except base rosin. Clearly, that would make a lovely puddle on the wall. So we look at our rosin supplies. Do we have enough? Do we need more? We look at our string inventory. Do we need extra E strings? We seem to go through a lot of E strings. Do we need extra A strings? We probably have 94 cello C strings because they don't break that often. So we just look at our string and rosin inventory. We look at our rock stops. We have a hard surface floor in our classroom, and it collects a lot of funky dust and hair and stuff. So a lot of times our rock stops need wiping down really good with cleaner to get that smushy dust off the back that makes them slippery so that they'll be nice and sticky again and stick on the floor. We look at our binders. Do we need to replace our classroom binders? We use binders on all of our stands that live on our stands, and that's where all our music goes for class. So do we need to replace our binders or any of the dividers inside of them? Do we need new office supplies? Are we going to be totally out of post-its to start the year? That's kind of unacceptable. Do we need more pencils? We usually have little stand pencils. Do we need more of those? All sorts of different things. How about tuners? All the different consumables that we use in our programs, shoulder rest, all of these things. The list can go very long. But we look at all of our consumable items and order what we can, make a list for the things that we'll get with our budget in the fall so that we know, hey, I'm going to need these items, or I'm going to go ahead and have these items in the pipeline so that when we come back in August, I'm ready to go. Some more processes that we always go through at this time of year is in the music library. So the music library is usually in a normal school year a zoo by the end of the year. Things have gotten reshuffled and put in weird places. And we have really great student music librarians in each class that help us refile the music, clean up the library. We have a digital copy as well as a hard copy of our library list. We get all that updated, print a clean copy, repair any of the folders. Our music is in those yellowish folders that you get from Pepper, I believe, or some of the other music companies. But we make sure that those don't need repairing or replacing, or that any of the music isn't falling out or anything like that. Sometimes we have the big Wanger music cabinets. We have to go in and reshuffle how many are on a shelf to fit more music. So we kind of look at the music library and make those changes. We also have student quartet books. With the older kids, a lot of times we're called on to do little performances for awards nights, but even in middle school, you may get that for maybe your honor groups. So we go ahead and get our quartet books organized, repaired as needed, cleaned up and back in good shape, filed back away. And then we depopulate all our orchestra binders, make sure all the old music is out, cleaned up, filed back away, make sure the dividers don't need to be replaced. We get all our method books cleaned back up. We've used so many method books this year. I think we used 4 different method books. And so we were using them all in a regular rotation. So we got all of those put back away, filed back where they go, and ready to go for next fall. So just making sure the music library is back in great condition so that when we come back in the fall and we're ready to hit the ground running, it's easy to snap and find that piece of music and get it put and pulled out and ready for the kids to play. Also, with the high school program, we're always considering nominating students for the Governor's Honors Program. We have students going this summer, but our school actually likes us to go ahead and make those nominations in May. And I think it's really important, even if your school doesn't ask you to make those nominations in May, you go ahead and start setting that up in your mind, who you want to nominate, because there is a process for auditioning and they need to have repertoire ready. And so we go ahead and select who we're going to nominate for GHP the following year. And we discuss with those students, are you going to commit to this process? Because we don't want to waste a nomination if a student isn't going to be able to commit to the process. And we discuss the process with them, go through the repertoire list, and get them ready for that, thinking through that, and start prepping this summer for that process. For our students, we really make sure that we go through the rosters very carefully all along from about January when we start registering on. I'm probably on my fifth roster check by now. My poor curriculum office, I'm always like, can we have clean rosters to see, make sure everybody's in the right class? But we have 5 separate ensembles that each have different rosters of kids. And if a kid gets misplaced, that can be a really big problem. And we always end up with schedule conflicts. Everyone does when you teach singletons like we do. And so it's really important we verify those rosters. We contact any kids that have gotten left off. This year is particularly tricky, I think, because we have a lot of kids who maybe did not make their best performance in their academic areas and are maybe having to make up some courses in summer school, but it has temporarily pulled them from our ensembles until they make up that course. So I really try to reach out to all of the students and make sure they know, hey, right now you're not registered for orchestra and you got to complete this class in order to be back in our class this fall. And so making sure the students know, hey, you're not on the roster, or hey, you have this schedule conflict. Do you want to change your biology class to a different level, or do you want to change your orchestra class to a different level? So giving students choices, discussing through them, making sure everybody ends up in the right place. In addition, our top orchestra has different requirements, and sometimes students get in there and realize, whoa, this is a lot of work. So this is a time too to have that conversation with your top orchestra and say, hey, here's what the expectations are. So if anyone needs to drop down or change levels, you can make those adjustments before summer. We always like to go down at this time of year. This year's a little different, but we always go down and take our 8th grade students' pictures and create a freshman board of all of our incoming freshmen and all their little faces so that we can see them and start learning their names. I think we'll be doing this probably when they come during open house in the fall. This year is just so crazy with all the digital learning, concurrent learning, all the different things that we're doing. So we'll probably do that actually in the fall. But normally this is the time we go down. We usually take some popsicles or some candy or some treats, go down and visit with those 8th graders, say hi, take their picture, and just kind of send them off for the summer. We also make sure we have, some years we do a paper mailing, some years we do a digital mailing. We either have mailing addresses up to date or emails from students to make sure they get our summer mailing. We've pretty much swapped over to an all digital format at this point, but sometimes you may want to do both, a digital and a hard copy. We've definitely done both before, so I think we're going to go with digital this year just because that's the way everything has moved. But updating families' email addresses, making sure they're correct so that everybody gets that welcome letter this summer. And then we want to update and print our summer mailing, or for us, it's been update and publish the summer mailing and get it ready to send out. That to me is always a big thing because that includes making sure the calendar is up to date, making sure all the information we want students to know as they come back in August is ready to go. And then that way, when we're ready to send it out in July, it's like push the button or send it out. It's ready to go. Other things that we kind of do at this time of year, always cleaning, so much cleaning. This year is a little different. Less things got messy because we didn't have many kids in the building. So, but we usually clean our storage up across the hall. That usually gets crazy during the course of the school year. And all of our little sectional rooms and side rooms need organizing and cleaning. Students are great at helping with a lot of these tasks. We set our meeting for the summer with our booster club so we can go ahead and close out our fiscal year that summer with them and plan our budget for the following year. And we have to clear our room to get our floors waxed, make sure all the student instruments are picked up that belong to them so that no instrument is left behind over the summer. And that way everybody is ready to go in August for a fresh start. So these are just some of the things we do. There's more, just like I'm sure you have a huge list of things, but I think these are kind of great jumping off points to sort of get you thinking in that mode. One thing that generally helps me is to just write everything down and check it off as I do it so that I know, okay, the library is done. Lock that room, close it down so that it doesn't get messed back up again, and just kind of keep closing out parts of the room as we go. Our next section is how we reflect on the year. So, what processes are we using to reflect? How did I reflect personally on my year? And what are some things you can do to reflect on your year? So, okay, we'll start with the good stuff. So, what went well this year? Definitely technology was often a great friend, or it could be a great foe sometimes, but it definitely for me ended up being an excellent part of my school year. I feel like it was sort of eat or be eaten with the technology, and so I decided to dive in, try a lot of new tech tools, and just go for it. And it worked really well. I learned a lot of new programs, a lot of new skills, things that I don't think I would have tried normally if it wouldn't have been a year where we were concurrently teaching. I definitely feel like Zoom and I are BFFs. I can do pretty much anything I want in Zoom now. I feel like the student management system that we use in our county called eClass, I feel like I can pretty much handle all that, all the googly things. So I feel like, for me, the technology was a huge glow for this year. I feel like it really forced me to up my game. I feel like in general, we maintained a pretty good level of student engagement throughout the year. We had very few students that we didn't see or that we lost contact with or were unable to connect with. There were definitely some students that were struggling, but I feel like we were able to pull them back in usually. Most every kid completed all the work for our classes. Obviously, there were kids that were spotty sometimes, but in general, we were really able to keep those kids captured. I feel like we did a pretty good job varying the activities enough each week and kind of planning out so that they didn't get too stuck in one thing too long, and then we change it up quick enough that they weren't able to get bored. So I felt like we had pretty good student engagement. I feel like this year too, we identified a lot of curriculum gaps for our students, and we kind of figured out what our core was for our curriculum. What were the most important things? So, being concurrent and with so many of our students being digital, we were mostly about 80% digital students and 20% in person at my school. And so we had so few kids in person, and we really learned to figure out what are the most important things that students need to know this year. What is the core of our curriculum? And then where are the gaps in our curriculum? What are our students not doing well? We learned very quickly that our students were not that great playing with the metronome. So it's something we spent a lot of time working on this year, and it helped us figure out where those gaps were in the curriculum for them and what was the most important things they needed to know in order to be successful, whether they were in person or at home, and how they could kind of manage their own learning. We definitely instituted a lot of organizational systems. This year was so much going on, so many places that kids could turn in things, kids turning in things in weird places left and right. It sort of became like the world's worst treasure hunt sometimes. But I did force us to become more organized. I think I did a better job of laying out every week what the plans were for the kids where they could see it clearly. And I did a better job laying it out for myself. You think, "Oh, I've taught a long time. This is year 19 for me. This is like clockwork. I don't need a lesson plan." But I did need lesson plans, especially this year. And the plan sometimes always lives here, but for me this year, putting it on paper, mapping it out, it's like, oh, this is good. I need to do this not only for the kids to see where we're going and what we've done. And if they missed a day of class, they could see on our daily slide that we had what we had done, what we're working on, what websites we did. And for me, it was really helpful just to have that organizational system in place. I also feel like we addressed a lot of social emotional needs this year. We spent a lot of time working on social emotional learning. And of course, it was embedded in the music we were doing sometimes. A lot of times, we just took a day and did social emotional learning, or we took 5 minutes and did a mindfulness minute, in the morning, or we did different activities. But I think for me, this was really important to start integrating into our curriculum. And while we had done SEL and why SEL is sort of what we do in the arts, we became much more deliberate about it this year. And it was definitely part of our program. And then finally, one of the best parts to me this year that came out of this whole school year And it really kind of stems back from last summer as we've come through this time of where we're really working on social justice and diversity and equity and inclusion. We really did a better job this year teaching and learning. I personally did a lot of learning about our Black and Hispanic composers and Asian composers and our Black, Hispanic, and Asian artists and musicians. And so I feel like I was able to teach students more about that because I was also personally learning about that. So for me, I felt like that was a huge win. I felt like it was a personal growth area for me, and I was able to pass that on to the students. So, why were these things successful? In general, I felt like I was willing to try more this year, new things, because it wasn't a normal school year. I think we were willing to be a little more brave and get out of our comfort zones because everything, the playbook went out the window, right? Everything was different. And so for us, it was like, okay, well, let's give it a whirl. If it doesn't work, that's fine. And we ended up having a lot of successes just because we tried things. And we were so much less driven this year by dates on a calendar, performance schedules. And while those things are so important, kids love concerts and all of those performance opportunities, in some ways it allowed us to step back and look at things from a different perspective. I felt like I was able to dive into different parts of my curriculum. I felt like I was able to connect with students differently. And I was so much less driven by some of those calendar dates and these set in stone markers that we always push ourselves to meet. So, moving forward, some of the things that I would like to take with me as we move out of this year and hopefully into a more what we would deem normal school year next year. I'd like to definitely continue using a lot of the technology we tried this year. We tried so many different tech tools that worked well for us. Definitely the online music performance program that we used was awesome. Our kids enjoyed it, they learned a lot from it. It was really nice to be able to hear kids play individually a lot more. I think we heard a lot more individual assessment. I think my students got more individual assessment and feedback than ever before, way more. And so that was really valuable in my opinion. I think definitely the social emotional learning piece is going to be key, especially as we return in August. Students are coming back to us from all different types of situations. I think it's going to be very important that we continue to meet those social emotional needs in our programs. And again, I think it builds those connections with kids. Also want to continue to work on my lesson planning and building those daily class slides and daily lesson planning books. And it doesn't have to be super formal, but for me, just really making myself sit down and look at what my short term and long term goals were and developing my plans that way. I also really like doing unit plans this year and kind of doing more long range planning. A lot of times we're repertoire based or driven by the repertoire in high school. I think in middle school it's a little bit more skills based, but I think in high school we tend to get a little wrapped up sometimes in what the rep is doing. And so for me, I want to move back towards more skill based and then let the rep fit the skills we're doing instead of the other way around. I'm really focusing on that skill building. And then I want to continue to support my students with all different kinds of learning about different composers and musicians of color and really explore those social justice movements and how music is part of that and how we can encourage that in our school. So some grows. I had to really stop myself because we could go crazy talking about all the things that maybe didn't go well this year. We all had different challenges. All of our schools were on different schedules and different models, but some of the things that just did not go well this year is we had such unavailability to do performances. And for our students, they're really driven by performance, most of them. That's why they joined our programs was to perform and to play and to be together. And that was really discouraging for me as a teacher. I think it was discouraging for them. And just not having those performances was wolf. Also, to me, virtual performances did not go well for me. That is not my skill set. The amount of time it takes to put that together is not something I want to commit to, and that I didn't feel like was going to benefit the students the same way some of the other things we did. So I just had trouble with virtual performances. And I know a lot of people had great success with virtual performances. For me, it just didn't work that well. That was definitely something I can get better at. Also, by the end of the year, I felt like the engagement of students with the cameras being on was a big problem. We started to just kind of slowly lose kids away from connecting with their cameras on, and it just got harder and harder. And then finally, I feel like we didn't do a good job recognizing our students this year. Normally, we do tons of awards and we have a big awards banquet and we do lots of recognitions and we did some things, but not like we normally do. And some of the whys here is I think we were all exhausted. I think the kids were very exhausted. I think Zoom fatigue is a thing. I think digital learning exhaustion is a thing. I think the teachers are done. I think the kids are done. And we were just exhausted and could not add one more thing. The bandwidth just wasn't there at times. Think we also had a lot of guidance, a lot of lack of guidance, excuse me, of how we got these performances off the ground. Now, at the end of the year, we finally started to seem to see more performances come back and have more guidance as to audience requirements and mask and so on. But, especially at the beginning of the year, we had no communication really about what we needed to do and how to do it well and what was going to be allowed and not allowed. And there was just so much up in the air. It made it very scary and unpredictable as to how we would hold performances. And even still, we're sitting in these rows with distancing and all this, and it just felt very disconnected from how we usually perform. And so, that was a problem for me too. We had such a high percentage of digital learners, it was very hard to be able to have performances and have all those different opportunities for students. And then finally, the cost of things became also limiting at times. This year, some of the programs we used were very expensive, and we had to sort of pick and choose. And hiring someone to mush together a virtual performance or paying for tons and tons and tons of trophies and awards, it just wasn't what we could do this year, not our normal way of doing things. And definitely that lack of bandwidth, especially at the end of the year. Everyone is just tired. So for the future, thankfully, a lot of these things are going to resolve themselves by us going back more in person next year. Our district is pretty much, well, we are considered basically 100% back in person. Any student that wants to learn digitally is being routed through our online campus. We have very few digital learners next year, so they won't be in our programs. And so with that comes no concurrent teaching for us, or from you, maybe less or no digital teaching. Also, next year, we have so much more guidance. We have vaccines now. We have so much more information, and that's so much more powerful to allow us to plan events and to plan fundraising and all these different things that we normally do in a school year. And then finally, we're able to offer in person performances. Even if we have to limit audience next year, we know now a lot more about how to do those things and how to do them correctly because we've tried them now. So I think thankfully a lot of these areas will be improved just by the nature of how we're coming back next year. So just a couple more points to ponder. As you're going through and thinking, is how were all the students successful? Why or why not? So we definitely had some students in my program who were not successful for a multitude of reasons. Some chose not to engage. Some chose not to attend school at all the entire year. That is a problem that I'm not sure that I'm capable of fixing. We did our very best. I think some of our students learned more than others. I think some of that is we can always do more and try more and reach out more and connect more, but we all had limitations this year. So definitely just asking yourself, were you able to make all students be successful? Hopefully you had great luck. Student survey data, I talked about this in my last webinar for the first part of May, is I use student surveys to really gather data on the year, look at that. To me, that's the most valuable information is their experience in my program. And just looking back already, some of the feedback has been really positive. The kids have been so sweet, so polite, and so thankful for the opportunities they have this year just to continue in orchestra. I've been really just appreciative of their feedback. It's been really great. Personal and professional goals. So every year we're required actually to set a professional learning goal every year. But even my personal goals, what goals did I set for myself? What goals do I want to set moving forward? Where do I want to grow? I think if we stop really asking ourselves, what do we want to get better at, then we don't really get better at anything. And so finding those things that you want to improve at, I definitely have some areas of growth that I need to address. I definitely have some professional goals that I want to work towards. Definitely continuing, hopefully on this trajectory with technology now that I've kind of gotten it going. So definitely things I want to work on. Summer staff development and planning. What opportunities maybe can you take advantage of this summer? Maybe you don't really want to go to a multi-day conference this summer. Maybe there's a Zoom conference you want to do. I've already signed up for one. It's short, it's only a few days, it's on Zoom, it's going to be recorded. So if I decide too much, I can always go back and watch. Maybe you want to just read a book this summer. There's some new materials that have come out, some new teaching music through performance has a new book out, all kinds of new resources. Maybe that's it. Maybe you just want to read through your method book. Maybe you just don't need to do anything this summer, but just thinking about what you maybe want to do this summer to help you prepare for next year. And then finally, one of the things that has helped me the most over the last several years is I developed a month to month planning calendar or a long range plan. I actually have broken down by month what things need to be done. And I keep that updated. I add to it, I take things away. I know that in May, I need to do all of these things. I know that in February, I need to do these things. So, like, if I need to order extra scores for LGPE, I know that falls in January. If I need to sign up for a invitational performance that happens every year, and I know they put out those applications in June, that's on there. So I really like to keep a month to month long range planning document to help keep me organized. So thinking forward, how can we move forward? What is going to go on? How can we prepare right now for next year to make that a smoother and easier transition when we come back this fall? So just these are some ideas for me that really help me prep for next year so that when I come back, I don't have to think about these things. And some of these I do right now, and some of them I kind of do as the summer starts. So definitely, I've already confirmed all my calendar dates for next year and all my facilities bookings. I don't know about you, but getting on the stage at our school is really tough. We have a lot of programs here that are doing a lot of things. So definitely booking out all my dates for next year was really important. I've confirmed all my rosters and I'll continue to check those rosters. I'll probably do another check in July just to make sure nothing went haywire over the summer. Maybe that doesn't happen to you. Weird things always happen, it seems like, with rosters. I usually look at any materials and music that I want to order and try to get that done during the summer. Completing the summer mailing we were talking about earlier. I usually try to update my handbook and that presentation right now while things are sort of fresh in my mind. Like, ooh, I didn't like that this happened this year, so I want to make that change in my handbook. Or this policy is changing in the county, so I need to make that update in my handbook. I go ahead too and like to set our trip info and figure out where we're going on our trip, get the pricing, get everything set up, those payment portals. So if we're taking a trip, students can go ahead and start making payments over the summer and get access to that information. That way, it's already done for me. Usually, too, during the summer, I'll archive the old Remind groups and get ready and set up the new Remind groups so students can join that first week of school. I don't think we would have made it through this year without Remind, best free tool ever. I usually will book all my conference hotels and register for any conferences that I can right now or any performances, whether we're going to do a special invitational or clinic or anything. I try to book all those in the summer, and that way it's done and I don't have to worry about it and try to remember and then have to pay more or not be able to get a hotel for that conference. I also check all my renewals and my memberships for my professional organizations. And I started thinking about program planning. Now, when we program here, we let the kids have some choice in that. So I don't pick all the pieces, but I started thinking about what might be good. Now, this year's a little different. I'm not quite sure what's coming back in the fall, just where the kids are going to be on everything. So I may worry less about this than normal. We may just not worry about this summer and think about it in the fall. But normally I try to start thinking about what kind of rep would be really great for this group, or what might I like to think about doing for LGP Fun. Going ahead and selecting some of your main student officers, I think it's really great because then you have a work crew over the summer if you need to get together and you can go ahead and start planning. And then usually we always set our booster budget in the summer for the following school year, so everything's ready to roll. I'm sure you can think of several other things too, but these are just some of the ideas that came to mind pretty quickly as I'm thinking about prepping for next year. So I'm super excited to have served as your moderator this year. It has been such a pleasure. I've learned so much just from creating content, and I am so looking forward to hearing what you're up to. I would love for you to share with your other music teacher friends our platform so hopefully they can hop on and join in our conversations. I would love to hear what you're doing and how you're closing out your school year, what your glows and grows for, and how you're planning going forward. I hope you have a wonderful summer, and we are looking forward to hearing from everybody. Take care.